All right, welcome back to Draws and Fades, episode 118, preview of the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines in San Diego, California. I'm your host, Owen Vrabel, joined by my co-host, Matthew Miller.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back.
Welcome back indeed. This podcast is sponsored by Rotoballer, and we will get into a bunch this week. We'll recap briefly Jon Rahm winning the AMEX in one of the most underwhelming events of the year, which we pretty much previewed last week. It's just really tough to follow the AMEX from Thursday to Sunday. Almost feels like you maybe get a chance to track your guys on one day of the week, which is when they're playing the stadium course, and then hope that they're in the mix on Sunday and see what happens from there. So we'll briefly talk about that. Get into the course preview at Torrey Pines, which will feature two courses, the North and the South course, and the odds list on FanDuel. Normal field, 156 man. We'll give you our best outright picks of the week. Tops 10s, top 20s, and my early leans on one and dones, although we are recording on a Monday, and this tournament starts on a Wednesday this week with NFL, playoff Sunday this week, championship Sunday, kind of trying to stay away from the NFL viewership, which, I don't know if it will matter that much for the Farmers Insurance, but it is one of my favorite tournaments. I love Torrey Pines. I know it gets maybe a little bit of a bad rap for being, I don't know exactly. Our guy Andy Lack doesn't really like Torrey Pines because it's pretty bland in the sense that the long hitters have a super advantage on most of the holes, and a lot of the holes are pretty straightforward in that aspect. Hit the ball long, you have a big advantage. We have seen different players play well here, though. But yeah, long hitters, long iron players have fared well here, and we've had some outliers here and there. But I like Torrey Pines. I think it's a fun tournament. I think it's also it's one of the first events where full field event at a legit course that also has a pretty legit field. So the course is tough. I think it eliminates a lot of shorter players' games if they're not playing up to their best potential. I think they have a really difficult time contending here. But other than that, it's an awesome course, I think. And the cream of the crop definitely rises to the top. The elite players typically are longer and better with their longer irons as well. So that kind of leads to a lot of the finishing leaderboards that we've seen. That being said, we've seen a couple of long shot winners win. Luke List for one, and Brent Snedeker a couple times, although, Brent back when he was in his heyday, which we haven't seen in a while. But Patrick Reed's had success. We've seen other guys had success. But before we get into that, American Express. Jon Rahm wins not nearly as easily as I guess we thought that it would be going into Sunday. I'll be honest with you. I had a Taylor Montgomery ticket, a Sung J M one and done ticket, and was hoping for the best on Sunday. Mostly feeling that Rahm was going to make a few birdies early, and it was just kind of going to be out of reach. And his biggest competition was Davis Thompson, who obviously has never won before in the PGA Tour, and it felt like Rahm was kind of just going to run away with it. But we've seen this a couple times now. Rahm has won a bunch recently. At most recently Tournament of Champions, coming back in Colin Morikawa, but he let everyone really hang around until the back nine, and then almost like everyone else kind of started to implode on themselves. Not like Rahm really took the bull by the horns, but nevertheless, he's an absolute freak show, and we'll get into where his odds are this week at Farmers Insurance, which happens to be one of his favorite events. So thoughts on Rahm coming into this week after a relatively dominant performance last week at the Amex, as much as we hate the event.
He talked about the event sucks. But he talked about, afterwards that he thought he hit his wedges really well. But the thing about Jon Rahm, that's he doesn't really make a whole lot of mistakes. So you kind of talked about it where guys were taking themselves out of it and messing up here. Jon Rahm doesn't really do that. So it kind of just feels like he's never going to implode and take himself out of a tournament. And in an event like that, he wasn't making a ton of birdie putts, at least on the front nine, and that's kind of what let people hang around or get back into it. But he still had plenty of opportunities to make birdie. And that's what's going to make him so difficult to beat this year. as the events get tougher, like it just seems like he's hitting it so well and so confident in his game that like he's not really going to have situations where he's just like hitting bad shots and just taking himself out of tournaments. Obviously, it's kind of hard to not overreact when he's played as well as he has lately. We have seen guys go through stretches like this where they're really dominant. And we talk about what kind of run that can go on, and it does flip fairly quickly. So things could change by the time major season rolls around. We still have like 3 months until the Masters, and then really the heart of the season's like getting into summer. It's still a while away, so things can change. But yeah, as of right now, he looks very hard to beat, and obviously this week again, this is a course that he's had a ton of success at. So he kind of looks like he's got everything rolling into high gear right now.
Yeah, and well, last week in particular, I mean, he's the guy that has come into conversation. Obviously, one of the best players in the world, probably the best player in the world right now. I think really Rory is probably the only argument you can make. Scheffler's been great, but of late it's been Rahm, and he's won his last 2 starts. He didn't even putt well last week in an event that he said was a putting contest. I mean, he lost multiple strokes putting and still won. Davis Thompson missed that putt on 17, which was big story of controversy. Like if you pulled the pin, would he have made it? Whatever the case may be, I don't care what you think. You never know. The pin pulled, you won't know if it was going to go in or not. It was a long-ass putt with a ton of speed. Might have gone in off the back lip, might have not. Either way, I don't think if it goes to 18 and they're tied, Jon Rahm all of a sudden folds and Davis Thompson wins this tournament. So at the end of the day, Rahm was going to win that thing. He really didn't face that much pressure on Sunday. As much as I wanted Taylor Montgomery to get into the mix, he absolutely completely imploded on 17, hit a famous shot of mine, just an absolute duck hook to the opposite side, which is right. He just nozzle hogged it and just completely pulled himself out of the tournament with that. And really no one gave him a run. So Davis Thompson, respect. I think he played consistent, at least on Sunday. But Rahm didn't even capitalize on the par 5s in the front 9 and then still won with, relative ease. Again, he didn't win by 5, but I never really thought at any point that all of a sudden Rahm wasn't going to win. So, yeah, 2 wins in a row for Rahm, coming into a tournament that he's won and also has 4 straight top 10s. 3 out of those top 10s are top 5s with a runner-up. So, pretty scary, Jon Rahm. But credit to Rahm, and what we like to do is bet on golf. He is basically providing more value on other players than we would typically get. So him being on this hot run means hopefully he doesn't win because it's going to be tough to bet on him. And he's giving at least some of the better elite players some better numbers than maybe we would get. And we'll get into the odds list, but there's a handful of elite golfers here this week. Actually, more than that, probably 7 or 8, 9 elite golfers at the event this week. And when you go past that, it gets a little bit scarier. So I think, I don't think – again, I was thinking about this when Sam Burns was playing well last week at the AMEX. The AMEX is such a hard tournament to really gauge in terms of what's going to happen in the next part of the season. I liked that Burns actually showed signs of playing well. I know you bet on him last week. I didn't. But then I was thinking about it too. Like I bet on Cameron Davis, Taylor Pendrith, a bunch of guys who looked like absolute dog shit. And does it really matter that they didn't play well at a birdie fest? Probably not. And also that they couldn't really get comfortable because they're playing a different course every day until Sunday. I don't know. So granted, all of the courses ended up playing easy, even a stadium course. Garrick Higgo had 7 birdies in a row on Sunday. The Sunday pins at the AMEX on the stadium course, he had 7 birdies in a row on the back 9. So how hard was it, really?
Yeah, no, it's not hard at all. Jon Rahm won at minus, 27 he got to? It's just absurd. I get it's not every event can be hard, but when you're getting near minus 30, maybe some things got to change a little bit. But also, it is a pro-am
the cut was 10 under, too.
Yeah,
so.
Well, the thing is, too, it's a pro-am, so, I guess you can't set it up that hard because you got regular guys out there. They're going to be, never finishing holes. You know?
Right. You don't want them to slow down the regular golfers, which makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Programs in general are kind of tough to follow and pay attention to.
I think our stance stands from when we previewed the event last week that it's just an absolutely god awful tournament to follow.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually think I hate it more than I even remembered that I did.
And this is what happens every year because it ends up being the first, like, one of the first full field events with like a pretty legit field, and so you buy into it, and then you remember you're not even going to be able to tell what you guys are doing on 2 of the 3 days before the cut. And then one of the days, obviously, you can track it. If they're not in a feature group, you're not really going to be able to watch them until it comes on TV, where your guy might not be getting shown that much anyway. It's just, I think it's a travesty for actually following golf, and I guess most pro-ams are. So
also, one last thing. I mean, I've seen, and we know golf Twitter is like a wild place, but I see like a bunch of guys like kind of high-fiving each other on there about like they got Rahm now like 16-1 to finish in the top 10 of all 4 majors. I would just say like tread very lightly on those.
It's not a good bet, no matter what.
No, it's remember last year we did the same thing. Remember last year at the beginning of the season when like Patrick Cantlay was like coming close to winning every single tournament, and like he was like even if he was like 5 shots back, he'd be like plus 300 on Friday to win. And people were like, "Oh, Patrick Cantlay is still available, like 20-1 to finish top 10 and all." Like, there's so much that happens in between now and all the majors, and so much that happens in the majors that like varies from like,
finishing top 10 at a major is no
simple afternoon wave on the wrong day takes you out of the top 10 sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So like to make that bet now in January, I do not think that's a good idea.
No, I mean, if you really like it, just hammer it every time it's available. I mean, like just hammer the top 10 that week. Otherwise, I mean, it's all it's going to take is said player to not finish in the top 10 at the Masters for you to rethink your whole bet. So, yeah. So we're coming around. Major season's not too far away, but any talks about majors really before even this part of the season has started, or the California swing into the Florida swing, like you have no idea what guys are going to be hot at the right time and what guys aren't. So again, like you mentioned, Rahm playing really good golf right now, probably going to play really well at the majors this year, but you're almost looking for guys that haven't really popped yet for those majors. If you're looking for value on the board for majors, like so
to take a guy now for a tournament in July is like we're half a year away. I mean,
right. No, unless you think that for sure that the odds are going to be worse by the time you get there, which again is talking about a guy who probably hasn't played well yet that might play well in the next month or so, and you're trying to get him before he gets into the hot streak, maybe taking him as a major, like at the Masters, taking him as a long shot, something like that, where you think he's 100-1, and maybe he'll be down to 50-1, or someone who's a 60-1 might be down to 30-1. Otherwise, you're just, I don't know, exposing yourself early to a market that you don't really know what's going to look like when it comes to April. So,
yeah.
All right, I think we spent enough time on that. The recap of the AMEX, I mean, tournament sucks. So we're on to the Farmers Insurance. New week. Again, we had I had a little bit of a run with Taylor Montgomery on Sunday, but other than that, I hit a Taylor Montgomery top 20. Cam Davis missed the cut. Neat Smith missed the cut. A bunch of the guys we liked last week did not play well. So we move on. Farmers Insurance, fresh field, fresh take. We are at Torrey Pines. Like I said, beautiful course, San Diego, California. Middle of the California swing. What are we working with this week, Torrey Pines?
Yeah, 2 courses, the north and the south. The north is the way easier of the 2. You're going to want to take advantage of the scoring on the north. It is a par 72, 7,258 yards, bent grass greens. If I remember correctly, we're going to run into a bit of a situation on the north course where we don't have shot track available there.
Yeah. And same with the statistics on this course.
Yeah, it sucks. But this time, we only are going to have one of the first 2 rounds in the north. The final 3, assuming you make the cut, are going to be on the south course. That's the tougher of the 2 courses. U.S. Open was held here in 2021. Jon Rahm did win. Par 72, 7,765 yards. Poa Greens is the longest course in the regular PGA rotation every season. So like you said, I mean, distance is obviously going to matter when you're on, the longest course on tour. A little bit kind of about the course. I mean, a lot of ball striking. Driving distance is going to matter. Approach game, approach from 200 plus yards. around the green is going to matter because, and we talk about this a lot, when you're that far away from the green, it just becomes harder to hit. And a lot of the time, that green regulation percentage is going to go down and you're going to have to scramble to save par. Um, some previous minus 15, Patrick Reed minus 14, Mark Leishman minus 15. This is not a birdie fest that, we've seen the last couple of weeks, well, at least last week, and the Tournament of Champions. This is one of the events that you're going to kind of have to grind it out. There's different ways really to win. I mean, longer hitters have an advantage, and most of the time you're going to have to ball strike your way around here. Patrick Reed, when he won at minus 14, actually kind of just was like a magician around the green. He went up and down a ton of times throughout the week. It was like pretty absurd. I mean, that's not really the traditional way to win. So
it's hard to compare him to anyone else too. So.
Yeah, I mean, only really he could do that. I'm sure other guys can, but he's one of the guys.
Snedeker is another example of a guy who's not that long, but he wasn't scrambling even to the likes of Reed. So
yeah, so I think, I mean, unless you have like some sort of magical week, with the short game, you're really going to have to hit your irons well and strike the ball well if you want to compete this week. It is one of those events. It's a tougher event, so we kind of talked about it last week. A guy who plays well at a birdie fest, it's not really necessarily relevant to coming in and grinding it out this week at Torrey Pines. It's a very different style of golf. So if a guy that you kind of like didn't play well here or didn't play well at the Tournament of Champions, or I wouldn't really take too much into account in that. I mean, you could look at it if he's not hitting his irons well, yeah, that could be a problem. But I don't think they're even relatively similar, styles of tournament. So I think you kind of have to look at this as one of those tougher events, and guys who can grind and kind of play well at majors or other harder events, maybe guys you want to turn to this week.
Yeah, that's fair. It's funny actually because Luke List, I will say, obviously I've talked about Luke List a ton. I love his game. He's super long off the tee, very good long iron player, and this course fits him perfectly. And so I agree for the most part in terms of playing well maybe up until this point in the new year or since the fall swing. A lot of guys are still shaking off rust, still getting into the swing of 2023. But ironically enough, I mean, List actually did put together 3 solid events before his win at the Farmers last year. He was 11th at the Houston Open, 10th at the RSM, both in November of the year prior, and then finished 22nd at the AMEX before he won the Farmers the following week. But I think he's kind of an outlier. And if you look at last year's leaderboard and the year before, 9 of the top 10 in both around the green and putting, only 2 players lost strokes. Will Zalatoris lost strokes on the putting green last year. Still finished second, had a chance. Well, he made the playoff and had a chance to win the event multiple times, really. And Luke List stuck it real close on the playoff hole, and Zalatoris wasn't able to make his putt. John Rahm actually surprisingly was horrible around the green last year. Still finished T3, putted well, but pretty common occurrences. These guys are all, anyone in the top 15 is pretty much gaining strokes on approach. The only guy who didn't was Sung J M last year, who was phenomenal around the green and on the putting green. So, and then the year prior, everyone inside the top 10 gained strokes on approach. Patrick Reed gained the least of the ones who were inside the top 10 and still won because of how phenomenal he was around the green and putting. So again, there are multiple ways to do it, but the easiest way to do is to be good off the tee, long and straight, and to be hitting your long approach irons with accuracy. So if you're not leaving yourself these opportunities to be poor around the green, and you are a good long ball striker, then you're going to have an advantage over the rest of the field because you're not in the fairways and you're short. You're going to be in a real tough time where you're going to have to be probably scrambling on more holes than you would like to. And at the end of the day, you are going to have to make some birdies here, which the longer hitters are going to have easier time doing than the shorter hitters. So in terms of what I'm looking for this week, I mean, it's definitely long and then guys that are good with their irons. And I guess I'm not looking too much into recent form, like you kind of just mentioned, even though I said Luke List had been rolling in with decent form last year. I don't think it's really they really haven't played a course like this in some time now. You know, they have played some Birdie Fest. If you played in Hawaii, or that even last week, you know, there's really not many similarities between the type of golf you've been playing and what's going to be required this week. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying I think the guys towards the top of the leaderboard are more likely to be very good off the tee and have good long iron approaches, and they happen to be the better players in the world. So, although we did see Luke List win here last year, and I actually jumped on him at 40-1 mid-round or mid-tournament last year, so I did hit on that, but I think it's tough to predict maybe some of these long shot guys, and you're going to want to have a couple guys towards the top of the board.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been pretty prior to Luke List. It's been pretty like big names that have won. I mean, you look at Justin Rose, like when he won, he was kind of toward the top of his game. Jason Day won the year prior, back when he was good. Mark Leishman, he wasn't like a surefire pick, but he's obviously a very good golfer. He's played well in a lot of big tournaments. So none of these guys are like complete surprises, other than Luke List, obviously. So yeah, I think this year, I mean, we have a little bit of a weaker field than typical, just because it's not one of the elevated events. So some guys we typically see are taking this week off. A lot of the live guys kind of played here. I mean, I know we see Dustin Johnson here. Typically, he's not obviously around this year. But
then there's also the event in Abu Dhabi this week, which is ironic. Obviously, Rory McIlroy's over there, not here. I take that for what you want. I mean, it's ironic at the very least.
Yeah, Middle East. That's kind of seems a little bit opposite of what Rory's been saying lately. But some of those guys are kind of allowed to do what they want and not get criticized. So we'll move into the odds list and our picks. But
yeah, no, I mean, and that's what it is. So again, bunch of top players are here. Not necessarily the most stacked field you're going to see, but definitely very top heavy. So Jon Rahm, after his win last week, 2 wins in a row, going off at under 5-1. I mean, I've seen him as low as plus 350. FanDuel has him at plus 390. And then we have a slew of other top 10 players that are in the field this week. Xander's going off at 11-1. He played really well last week. We didn't recap it, but his albatross was absurd. You don't see those very often. I mean, hitting an approach shot that long into the hole is absurd. So he's here, and he's now under Colin Morikawa at 12-1, Tony Finau at 12-1, and then Justin Thomas and Will Zalatoris are 13 or 14 on FanDuel. So that's the top 6. I'm going to rattle off a few more. Sungjae Im, Jason Day, and Max Homa are at 20-1. Jason Day's number has really dropped. So is Max Homa's. Feels like people are on them this week for good reason. Both have good course history. Both seem like a good course fit. They're now at 20-1 alongside Sungjae. And then Taylor Montgomery, the up-and-comer we've been talking about, I bet on him last week. He's at 26-1. So that's FanDuel, and this is Monday. Odds have shifted already pretty drastically over the course of 12 hours, mostly in that 20 to 40 range. We've seen some movement, and that's probably because a lot of the most popular bets are coming in that 20 to 40 range, and because there's more value there than taking the guys under 15-1. So that being said, I told you how I felt that the elite guys are most suited for this course. Did you take a look at any of the guys under 20-1 and who you got up top?
Yeah, I'm going to start my card with Max Homa.
Okay.
Snagged a 26-1 on him earlier today when it came out on FanDuel. He's moved to 20. Seems to be a pretty popular play, which is kind of always a little bit scary because it's not, it's rare that we get a group win, but it does happen sometimes.
Yeah,
so
I'm on board with you, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. I'm on board. I was skeptical before the odds were released. I told you this offline that like it felt like he was going to be a sub 20 number. I got 25. I'm okay with it. But again, it is scary.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is we got West Coast Homa back.
Yep.
Max Homa always performs well in California. He's obviously, newborn is a new dad, but he actually looked way better than I thought he was going to the Century Tournament of Champions. Not the most relevant thing, but he did finish third. He gained 2 strokes on approach. He putted pretty well, so he had less rust than I thought he was going to have. But this is kind of what we've talked about. I mean, to start this year, like Max Homa is a guy who when he's in events like come the weekend and Sunday, like he typically wins them. And he's won twice at the Fortinet, but other than that, I mean, he's had pretty impressive wins. He won at Riviera with a tough field down the stretch. He's won at Quail Hollow, and he won last year at Potomac, one of those tough, grinded out type of events. It was inclement weather. I think he won at like -9. So he does pretty well at these tougher events. He kind of is one of those grinders that he doesn't make a ton of bogeys at these tough courses. He's kind of good across the board. I mean, around the green, he's going to need to have that's probably his weakest part of his game. So he's going to need to have, a plus week there. But he missed a cut here last year. Before that, he has pretty good history. He was 18th in 2021 and 9th in 2020. So I like him at this event. I mean, he feels like a guy that plays well kind of in these, not majors, but these stronger non-major type of events. And he's won a few so far. So I think it's a, pretty solid value out of those top guys on him.
Yeah, it's a fair number. I didn't expect it, so at that point I was going to take it. I am a little upset that he's so oversteamed this week. I feel like everyone in the golf Twitter community is on him, which doesn't mean really anything, just besides the fact that he is popular this week, which is fine. But like you said, yeah, he grinds it out. He does have a mixed bag of finishes here. He's either missed a cut or come inside the top 20. And it's funny because he actually really hasn't put it all together at this event quite yet. I mean, in 2020, he finished 9th and did gain strokes in all of the metrics. But the year after, in 2021, he was really good on approach, really good around the green, was horrible off the tee and horrible putting. I think if he puts it all together, he's definitely going to be in the mix. And like you said, Weekend Max is now a guy that contends at tournaments. He doesn't win all of them, but when he's in contention, you can be pretty confident that he's going to at least be rock solid. And I think that's the most you can ask for the guy in this range. I did like starting my card there as well, but I also wanted to grab one of the more elites. I think Homa is kind of on the outskirts of being in this elite category. And I think this is going to end up being just a straight up Will Zalatoris course. So I'm going to take Will this week. He's played this course 3 times, 2018 as a very young guy. Missed the cut. 2021, 7th, and then last year, obviously, in the playoff against Luke List. Couldn't get it done, and you kind of thought it was going to be the first time he would get it done going up against Luke List, but credit to Luke List, he was nails in the playoff and did what he had to do. He lost over stroke putting last year, but was absurd in every other statistical category, gained over 12 strokes tee to green, almost 8 strokes on approach, was good around the greens and really good off the tee. And like we mentioned, if you're really good off the tee and you have really good long irons here, you almost don't have to be as good around the greens. You're going to be hitting more greens in regulation than a lot of the field, which he does week in and week out anyway. This is just one of those events that I think is going to suit him year in and year out. And I did like the fact that, we haven't seen him in a while, coming off the injury where he pulled out of the BMW. He then finishes 11th at the TOC early January, played pretty well. Actually didn't strike the ball that well with his irons. And then last week finished 36th at the American Express. Nothing crazy, but again, was pretty solid. Actually putted well, has putt well now in 4 straight events where there have been statistics there. So, I think Will's kind of figured it out. And I think these events, similar to Homa, are going to be his bread and butter where, he's grinding out pars and making birdies where other guys don't have the opportunity to. So I like Zalatoris a lot this week as kind of the top of the board guy, but
yeah, it feels like it's a course that fits his game perfectly. I mean, obviously he's had good finishes here, and I think he's looked better than we could have kind of anticipated off the jump. He hadn't played in so long after that injury. I think he's still, his iron game isn't back to where like it was, which obviously isn't expected right away. But one thing I'll add, and I'm kind of interested to see this week, is they talked a lot about when he was hurt, he worked a ton on a short game because that's all he could really do. So he's feeling way more confident in that, and he thinks it's improved from where it was. So this will be a good test for him this week.
Yeah, and if that's the case, we already know how talented Zalatoris is. If he starts, reeling in that part of his game, he climbs into the, Xander, Cantlay category where you're never really going to see a good number on Zalatoris, which I think we've kind of already reached that point, and that's why he's at 14-1 with really not a ton of recent form post-injury, besides playing at the TOC and now at the American Express. So I'm just staking my bet that this is going to be a Zalatoris course for the his career, and I think that he's going to win this thing eventually. So I'm going to take him for this foreseeable future as long as things don't go catastrophically bad for him. So that being said, I think Rahm is a freaking monster right now. I'm pretty scared about him. He is really good at this course. Everything points to him continuing to play well. So maybe we see him go on a little bit of a biblical run here where he wins 3 events in a row, but I think it's really hard to win golf tournaments. There are enough big names here where I think it's tough. Xander and Finau, JT Morikawa, all equally as, I think, intimidating this week. Morikawa coming off his collapse, I don't know where his game is at mentally, and talking about course fit, he is super accurate off the tee. He's not quite as long as some of these other guys, and his long iron is going to be really good. So
who's that?
Morikawa. So I think, technically it's not as long, but his long irons can be really good. So I'll give him that. I thought his number was a little low coming off the choke job, but I think the Zalatoris just fits this course better.
Yeah, this is also, for anyone listening, it is a home game for Xander. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of talk about that this week. He's a, La Jolla, San Diego guy, so he knows this course like the back of his hand. And he actually, he was horrible here, which was weird because it was like kind of like the course he knew the best, but he has actually kind of turned that narrative around the last couple of times he's played here. That said,
but he also, in general, has been like not really a home course guy. Like I feel like he feels the pressure pretty quickly. So
he did finish runner-up in
2021.
Yeah, I feel like Xander's one of those guys. We've seen it at majors and kind of in general, like when he's in the mix. He's almost like he kind of tends to fold under pressure.
Big time.
Sad but true. I used to be a Xander guy, and the amount of times that I had confidence in him on Sunday just to watch him melt down one way or the other, it's just like I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And then others of note, obviously JT, anytime he's in the field, can be a legitimate force to have to deal with. And I think he's probably going to be the most under-talked about guy, maybe underappreciated of the top guys because he hasn't quite played his best golf in quite some time. And the other guys have shown a little bit more fire recently. But, he's got a top 10 here. Granted, 2014, finished 20th here last year. Nothing crazy. I think he'll go under the radar the most. If you're playing DFS, maybe he's a good value play. But other than that,
I hope that he doesn't play that well this week because I have a weird feeling about JT next week. Or not next week, at the Waste Management Super Bowl Sunday.
All right.
So I'm kind of hoping he doesn't play that well and we get a decent number that, with him there.
Yeah. For all these guys, I feel like they would have to really, really be bad for the number to be significantly improved, but we'll see. And then Sungjae Im, noted just grinder. I think this is another course that could suit him well, but last couple of weeks been disappointing. I obviously used him one and done last week. Didn't play well on Sunday. Kind of just disappointing in general, but didn't play bad. I don't love his number at 20-1. I think it's relatively fair, and we'll get to the next group of guys. He's better than, and then Jason Day at 20-1, just insane. So
God bless you if you're taking that. I get he's been good at
so
this.
If Ricky Fowler had finished top 10 last week, what were we going to see as 25-1 on Ricky Fowler?
I get Day's been like good here, and I guess he's playing better, but to bet him at 20-1 is
not healthy.
Something I wouldn't do. Yeah,
definitely not healthy. So, all right, let's move on. Spent a lot of time there. And then Taylor Montgomery. Before we go on, he's now 26. Looked really good last week, but 26 at a course that, I don't necessarily think it doesn't fit him, but last week, more of a little bit of a putting contest where he's been an extremely good putter. I think this number is a little disingenuous. I don't think 26 is a good number to bet on Taylor Montgomery this week. I'm jumping off for now, but he did prove a lot to me last week. I think he's going to be really good. I think he will win on the PGA Tour. So just wanted to get that out there. Let's move on. 30-1 and higher, Hideki Matsuyama, Siwoo Kim, Matt McNeely, all between 31 and 33 on FanDuel. And then a little bit of a jump to Sahith Theegala, Cam Davis at 42-45. Quickly above 50 to J.J. Spawn, Justin Rose, Keegan Badley. And then Harris Ingles, Taylor Pendrith, Wyndham Clark, Gary Woodland at 65. Scott Stallings, Hayden Buckley at 70. Luke List, 75. So former champion Luke List coming in at 75, roughly around what he went off last year at this tournament as well. Take that for what you want. I think the odds books know what they're doing in terms of it feels like the winner is going to be coming in the top half of this board. Not even the top half. I mean, guys under 50-1. So really, Matt, anyone from 30 to 75, the floor is yours. I think
Yeah, I
then
think
in long shot territory, it gets even tougher.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of a value play. Like one of the names you just mentioned, in my opinion, is not really like the others. I think Hideki Matsuyama is clearly the elite out of that category. Over 30-1 for him is no disrespect to my guy Siwoo, who's been playing some good golf, but I think the names that Hideki's with, he's 2 points away from Mav McNeely. That's a pretty big insult. I mean, Hideki Matsuyama is a major champion. He's performed at some big events before, and Maverick McNeely really hasn't done anything. Sahith Theegala, Cam Davis, I mean, JJ Spawn, Keegan Bradley. Hideki's just way better than all these guys. And obviously, you're getting a little bit higher up the odds list when you get to the 50s. But I just think the value on the board is Hideki. He's made 6 straight cuts here. He was 12th in 2018, 3rd in 2019. Great iron player, which we talked about, you're going to need this week. He gained over 6 strokes tee to green at the Sony and 4.9 on approach. So he really just, his result there wasn't that good because he lost 5 strokes putting, which, yeah, I mean, that could happen. But putting is a stat that kind of varies week to week more than anything else. So I thought he struck it really well last time we saw him. It seems like pretty good value on this board.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm intrigued by Hideki this week. I think that is true. And there have been better numbers. At 31 is definitely lower than it was earlier in the day. And comparing him to any other guy between 30 and 60 is like comparing apples and oranges. Hideki is by far the most established player of this group. Gonna take 14 points higher, at least on FanDuel, and go back to Cameron Davis. I'm just gonna keep hammering this until it completely blows up in my face, which it kind of already has, but I still think Cameron Davis is gonna have a big year. He's in theory a perfect fit for this course. Should be long, should be good with his long irons. But it's funny because he really hasn't done shit at this tournament so far. He's made every cut, but finished between 35th and 55th, basically. So that being said, I'm going to be really pissed off if he plays well this week. I think Luke List, for the most part, kind of came out of nowhere last year. I think Cam Davis and other long hitters have the ability to do something similar, and his talent level is good enough where I think he can overcome some of his shortcomings. So I'm going to keep going back to Cam Davis. I don't want to harp on it too much, but I think if you're looking to make a safer play, Hideki probably is that. And yeah, I have a feeling Will Zalatoris wins this week, and that's really what I'm hoping for because the rest of my card is a little bit scarier and going to need some good things to happen. So do you have anyone else under 75 out of your takings? I do have.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of my card, I'm basically rolling Homa Hideki, and then we're going rogue here. I'm going to go back to Taylor Pendrith, 65-1.
I'm going back to Taylor Pendrith too. Love it.
I mean, how stupid are we? He was so bad last week. But I will say this week, I mean, he's a bomber. He's got that going for him. I think he's a kid with, a lot of talent. He's a young kid. I don't know. I feel like he's going to have a good year. I like his game a lot, and I don't want to miss out on it. And I don't think it's a horrible course for him. There's nothing that he really did last week that inspired me to think that he's going to win this week, but I do like his game. And kind of when you look at the guys on the odds list around this number, he's kind of the one I like the most here.
Yeah, and he's a ball striker. I mean, he's still over his last 50 rounds. I mean, I get that's going back pretty far ways, but 8th in ball striking, 3rd in strokes gained off the tee, 33rd on approach. So we're going to need him to be long and straight. Hopefully the driver's with him this week playing well, and then just don't miss a lot of greens, and hopefully the putter can come around a little bit. This putter has been pretty bad, but, I mean, granted, he actually he gained strokes putting last week and gained almost 4 strokes putting at the RSM back in November. So I think the putter is a possibility, like any week with any of these guys. Similar to Luke List, very similar to Luke List, really.
He kind of has that profile.
Yeah, he can be horrific on the greens, but all it takes is one good week where he's actually striking the ball phenomenally, and then he starts making some putts. So, yeah, I'm with you on the Cam Davis and Pendrith train in general. Just think that their games should line up well here, and it could blow up in your face just like it did last week, but I like it.
Yeah. Do you have anyone else under 75 or?
Yeah, so I'm just going to do it again. I'm going to go back to Luke List. I didn't take him outright last year, added him live at 40-1. Wish that I had taken him at 80-1, obviously, in hindsight. But I don't know. I think it's a little disrespectful to leave a number on the past champion at basically the same number he went off at the year before. He's been pretty consistent at this event since 2018. He's made 5 straight cuts, finished 10th in 2021, 12th in 2018, and then obviously he won last year. And for whatever reason, I mean, this is one of the events that the putter can somewhat get hot. So gained over 3.5 strokes putting twice at this event. If everything else is clicking for him, I think things can go well. And he's played really poorly since his win last year. And the only signs of life we've seen since was at the Century Tournament of Champions just a few weeks ago. So I thought maybe that could spark him into feeling pretty confident coming into a week at a course that he knows well and obviously has success at. It would be astonishing, I think, if he wins back-to-back years at the same event. But, I mean, we've seen weirder shit happen. I mean, K.H. Lee has done it. Obviously, Hudson Swafford has won multiple times at the same event. Like, some guys just feel it at certain places, and I think this could be Luke List's kind of thing. And I don't know how many times I hammered home last year that it was going to be Luke List was going to turn into Jason Kokrak for a period of time where he's going to win multiple events in a little bit of in a row. Didn't happen. So maybe he'll just win this event again. So I'm going to take it.
Yeah, well, I mean, given our experience when we met Jason Kokrak, I hope he doesn't turn into him.
No, yeah, definitely not. Luke List, much better guy.
Yeah, Jason Kokrak, douchebag.
Yeah.
But moving on, do you have any longer shots, or are we going like just rest of the card?
I mean, that's
here,
pretty much that's pretty much my card rounding out. I do have a few other thoughts with similar style feels to what I've been going with so far, and then I have a couple of friends and family plays that I've played for so long that I'm probably going to play for a top 20 or top 40. But other than that, Zalatoris, Homa, Davis, Pendrith list is going to be my core, and we'll go from there. So
I have
hit us a little long shot.
Yeah, I have two more long shots here to throw on the card. Having some fun down here. I'm going to start 100-1. Thomas Detry.
Okay.
He was 26th last week at the AMEX. He's playing pretty well lately. I mean, obviously there was a bit of a break, but he's in terms of results, 6 top 20s in his last 10 starts. The strongest field of all of them was the BMW last year. He finished T5, so he kind of can perform in some of these stronger fields. The problem that he has is he's not really a closer, but at 100-1, I'm gonna take a shot on him. I think that Luke listed out last year. He gets himself in the mix. He's not come Sunday. Distance here to compete. Pretty good ball striker. I think things are gonna kind of need to go his way in order to win, but that's what happens when you bet a guy triple digits. You're going to need things to go your way. I think I could see him kind of hanging around as a decent fit here. So he's going to be my first choice at 100-1.
Yeah. Well, and also in your favor, you were cutting in and out a little bit there. So we don't really know exactly what you said. We got a good gist of it. So that could be good. So Thomas Detry, take it or leave it, triple digits. Let's go.
I see Xfinity has screwed me again.
Yeah, Xfinity is really banging you over at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've already gone on my rant with them. They suck. But hopefully this next one I don't cut in and out on. I'm going to take Brendan Steele, 120-1.
Wow, I didn't think you were going to do it. You mentioned him earlier. So
yeah, I mean, I've never done it before, but I got to tell you, I actually looked and I like what I see out of Brendan Steele. He gained 3 strokes on approach at Sony, 5.5 the AMEX last week. Last calendar year, he's lost strokes off the tee 1 time total. He gained strokes on approach 13 of his last 14 starts. 7 of those 13 were over 3 strokes on approach. So he's had really good ball striking. Last year, he was 6th on the year on tour, strokes gained off the tee. And He's 42nd driving distance, so he's not that short either. Farmers Insurance history, he's made 7 of 10 cuts. None of the 7 he's really been like, chance to win. They all came between 17th and 49th, but there's enough there for me to just take a shot on him. I mean, the ball striking has been there for Brendan Steele.
It's also kind of surprising he's 42nd in driving distance. You don't look at him.
I was pretty stunned to see that. I was surprised by that. But
and also last 50 rounds. I mean, he's been lights out. I mean, off the tee, 5th, 2nd on approach, 2nd in ball striking, 4th in tee to green.
Yeah.
And then everything else is really bad. Like his putting and around the green game has been horrendous. But if he's hitting the ball well, he doesn't have to worry about those things as much. I can see it, and that's probably why he's played well.
Brendan Steele?
Maybe no, but maybe maybe for a first-time leader or something like that. But I mean, I've seen some things happen with Brendan Steele where I don't really trust him to do anything. But he could. If Luke List can do it, he can do it. But
you gotta admit that's pretty surprising when you look at the numbers.
No, startling stats, very startling. I will say I didn't do a ton of research on this guy coming in because I know it's not good, but Cameron Champ,
I thought about him.
Pretty big number for a guy that hits the ball as well as he does off the tee. And we know he can be good with his longer irons, but similar to Brendan Steele, can be absolutely horrific around the greens and on them. So I've been thinking about that at 120 to 1. He's got a mixed bag of finishes here, 2 missed cuts and a 16th and a 46th. I could be looking at him for a top finishing position, and maybe a first-round leader play as well. And, I mean, it's really tough to trust Cameron Champ really at all because he either misses the cut or plays okay. Rarely is he in the mix. He has pulled off a victory before, which is shocking. But, Cameron Champ is on the list of thoughts. And then friends and family, what?
If you want some good vibes on Cameron Champ, I mean, I don't know if he's going to be a dad. He just announced that on Instagram the other day. So
all right, that is good vibes because I think the baby coming makes life a lot more difficult. So him, his wife being pregnant is probably better than the baby already being here. Although we're taking Max home this week, so that is what it is. But
I didn't know I followed Cameron Champ on Instagram until I saw that post. But here we are.
So a couple friends and family. I mean, I almost forgot that this happened, but Henrik Norlander in a second here, and I can't believe that it actually happened. It was 2 years ago, 2021, but he gained 3.5 strokes on approach, 3.5 strokes off the tee, and over 3 strokes around the green. Didn't putt well like typical, but he's 320 to 1. The odds on his top 40 is probably going to be pretty electric. So I think I'll probably take a shot there, even though he's been, I don't know, I guess he's been okay recently. I mean, for Henrik Norlander, it's usually a big, nice round on a Thursday or Friday, really tragic on one of the other days. So I'll take the fact that he finished 39th at the RSM and 15th back in November, 24th at the Sandersons. I mean, nothing great, but the guy that finished second here, I think, again, ball striker extraordinaire, not really good at anything else. So maybe there's something to him having a good feel here. I think he'll have a good number for any of those. And if you're looking for a weird DFS play, I think Norlander could be on a good track for you. And then Matthew Neesmith, I was hoping for a little bit better of a number because of how badly he played on Thursday last week, although he did play extremely well Friday, Saturday, almost made the cut, but he's 150 to 1. I'm not going to take him outright, although I have regretted that at other times when he gets into the mix, but I'll probably look into another top 40 on him. I think his top 40 market for the year will be worthwhile to continue to bet them. So I'll take Matthew Neesmith again, another course where I think iron players will succeed and hopefully you can figure it out. So those are my friends and family top finishing positions.
Well, while we're on friends and family, is our boy Harry Higgs back? He was in the mix last week.
Yeah, maybe.
Harry Higgs and Doc Redman coming off good starts, both down here at 320 to 1.
Yeah, Higgs is right next to Norlander and Smotherman and Redman. They're all at 320.
Yeah, Smo too. I mean, this actually is a course that can.
Yeah, no, it should be decent for all of them. So, well, except for Harry, I don't really try. I don't know if that's gonna be a good place for him, to be honest.
Smo, it should be a good fit. The problem is he is so bad around the green that it could be a problem because he's going to miss enough
He's
of them.
due for a blow up hole, which is what happens. Like,
yeah,
you need to be able to scramble when you don't hit a good shot, and that's where him and Doc both concerning. But I think if you bet all 4 of those top 40,
you're going to hit one.
You're going to hit one. You have to check that the odds are going to work out in your favor there. You need plus 400, which you probably won't get.
I imagine they're work in your favor.
Yeah.
It's going to be around like, I mean, I'll check it now.
I don't think they're up yet on FanDuel list. So that's where we're at. It's Monday night, East Coast 9:30, West Coast 6:30. I think we'll wrap that up here. I'm rolling with Zalatoris, Homa, Cam Davis, Taylor Pendrith, Luke List. Probably going to sprinkle some Cam Champ for first-round leader as well. And then Neesmith and Norlander, kind of my long shot. Top finishing plays. May add a few other things before the end of the week. But, again, it's a weird week. Starts on Wednesday. So what do you got so far, Matt?
Yeah, I have outright Homa, Hideki, Pendrith, Detry, and Steele. I'll probably add.
It's an interesting card. You don't hear that very often. So.
No, it's a crazy card. Very abnormal for me. Outside of Max Homa, these are not guys I typically take, but sometimes you got to mix it up a bit, you know.
Yeah. Well, and we're going back to back on Pendrith, even after a bad performance. So credit to us.
Yeah, credit to us. Well, it would also be typical of us to chop off him, and then he plays really well and gets himself in the mix. So
yeah.
And then I'll have some kind of finishing positions that they're not even up yet on FanDuel. Right. But obviously we're crunched for time. We only got a day.
2 days. Yeah.
Till it starts. Yeah.
And then I'm interested to see where Redmond, Smotherman end up for finishing positions as well. Harry Higgs, I don't think this is a good idea, but maybe he's figured something out, and maybe his short game will be locked solid this week, and he can find himself inside the top 42. But I guess whatever. We're talking about it, so we might as well just look. I mean, first of all, his last 50 rounds on Fantasy National, all red. So, and Farmers. Probably going to make you feel pretty good. I mean, he finished 9th 2 years ago. So
wow. So he's got a little course history here.
A 9th, a 65th, and a missed cut.
That's okay. Well, I mean,
320 to 1, a guy finished inside the top 10. But yeah, coming off a really nice week.
It is kind of wild. He's played like weirdly good at like tough courses.
Every now and again, but then sometimes when we talk about him, he plays really shitty. So
yeah, but like, how about like the craziest thing is that he finished 4th at Kiowa at the PGA Championship.
Yeah, that was insane. So yeah, I mean, Harry's due for a big weekend every now and again. But so that's why I'm a little bit worried. Like, I don't know how many back-to-back weeks of him playing really good he has, but I don't know. I feel like those guys that are a little bit further down tend to not really string together maybe elite performances back-to-back weeks, but playing a birdie fest, coming into a tournament where he does have a top 10, I may have just talked myself into being bullish on Harry Higgs this week, even though he sneaks up on you. I wasn't even paying attention to him, and then all of a sudden he was in the top 5 at one point last week. So
yeah, he's like, I feel like once he gets that confidence, I mean, you can't take it away from him.
Right. And I mean, again, he was top 5 at one point and then finished 18th. So you know what I mean? So if you had him for a top 20, you just got you got that cut in half, unless you had. So yeah. So yeah, that's really it for now. I'm one and done. Pretty pissed about Sungjae last week, and I'm kind of developing a strategy now for the rest of the year where I'm still workshopping that. Really trying to put in pencil at least guys at major championships, and there's 11 of the elevated events this year, which make it more interesting in terms of picking players at non-elevated events. You really want to make sure you're not going to use them at what would be an elevated event, so this week makes it interesting because there are, probably seven players, maybe 8 if you include Hideki, that I would definitely consider at a major championship or an elevated event. So do I want to use them and cross them out for a future elevated event, or do I want to take a risk on maybe, taking a Cam Davis, which I do not trust at all. So at the end of the day, I've learned my lesson. Don't really delve past the top 10 players in any given field. So I may just end up biting the bullet and taking Max Homa this week, even though I know he's going to be very popular, but really could use a top 10. So those are my one and done thoughts currently, subject to change. Not off to the best start, but it's around the next month or so where you can really make a move and one and done. First 2 weeks don't matter too much, so I'm not worried about it. But yeah, coming to a nice stretch of golf here. Not very far away from the Masters. We got Pebble Beach next week, then Waste Management for the Super Bowl, which is in Phoenix. It's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter at draws_and_fades, at Owen_Vrabel, and at MattyMills85. We'll catch you guys next week, and good luck this week.